Hello, I'm Fraser Myers, Deputy Editor of Spiked, and I am delighted to be joined today by Jonathan Conricus, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies and a former IDF spokesman. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Jonathan, I wanted to start off by asking you about a claim that has been doing the rounds. It's kind of an absurd and extraordinary claim. This idea that Israel is not only uh, raping and torturing Palestinians, but also that they have trained dogs to rape Palestinian detainees. And I wouldn't ask you this if it was just a conspiracy theory going around online, but it's been endorsed by none other than the New York Times, the US paper of record. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it's absolutely amazing and mind-boggling that the New York Times would not only print it, that Nicholas Kristof would write it, think of it, and then that the Times would print it, and then that the New York Times would stand by his lies and his fabrications and his reporting of Hamas allegations against Israel, which is what this is. This is a hit piece by the New York Times against the state of Israel. It is libelous. It is fictional. It is untrue. There are a few points that really stand out. One is that Christoph doesn't just try to say, here are various stories of sexual abuse. He tries to portray a picture of systemic, organized, structured sexual abuse and rape by Israeli authorities, which is a lie. That's fiction. Have there been cases of maltreatment and abuse by Israeli guards against Palestinian detainees? I'd assume so. I think it happens in every prison facility around the world. I don't think that Israeli prisons are different. They need to be reported, they need to be investigated, and those in charge need to bear consequences, and it shouldn't happen. It will happen in every prison facility, but it should be minimized and the standard should be higher. But to go from that and to portray a picture of systemic sexual abuse is, in my mind, absurd. And the easiest thing to really fact check and clearly expose how desperate and how ridiculous the claims are is the whole dog situation. Now, I apologize to the viewers if I get a little bit too specific here, but it is biologically impossible to get a dog aroused enough to penetrate a human being on command. And this isn't me saying, because what do I know about dogs? This is dog handlers, trainers, canine experts with decades of experience who are now on record in various stories. The Free Press ran a good, I think they ran the first story about it, but there's others on record saying this is physiologically impossible. Yet after this was published, the New York Times still stands behind their story and insists that the journalistic standards of Christoph are sound and that all of the information was cross-checked and corroborated by witnesses and family, which is to me quite amazing. But I'm actually happy that they're doing that because it gives Israel even more a stronger case now that Israel is suing the New York Times. I'm happy that Israel is doing that the Prime Minister decided it, and it's going to happen whether directly by the State of Israel, Minister of Foreign Affairs or Ministry of Justice, or via proxy, an American organization. We'll have to find the correct legal way of doing it. But the bottom line is that for the first time, ordinary people will be able to get discovery and insight into the decision-making process at the New York Times. Who makes the decisions? On what ground do they make the decisions? What passes the journalistic standards at the New York Times? And why did they decide to post a story and then not to retract it when it was clearly scientifically abundant that it isn't possible for a dog to be trained to rape human beings? So it's going to be very interesting. And I look at the New York Times with great disappointment. It's a newspaper that I used to read myself today. A lot of the people who work there have gone from journalist to activist to journalism. It's gone through from reporting the news to then doing lots of opinion masquerading as news and then to activism. That's where we are today, and I regret that because I think there's a very strong need in the world for strong professional journalism that is there to hold power accountable, to expose wrongdoings, to fight injustice. That is definitely needed, but the New York Times is doing exactly the opposite.
Yeah, and I mean, in some ways, the dog allegation is quite useful because it is so clearly dishonest. Whereas there are a lot of what I consider to be dishonest allegations against Israel that have become completely normalized. People will talk about an Israeli genocide in Gaza now
Yeah.
without even batting an eyelid.
Yeah.
They don't even say the word with much feeling because
Yeah.
it's just well the genocide in Gaza. It's become in many people's minds an established fact. What do you say to counter that?
What a win for Hamas.
Mm.
That is a, if, they achieved a few things on October 7. Uh, Probably their biggest achievement was uh, in the West, in the UK, in Europe, in some parts of the US, where thanks to how their propaganda was willingly amplified in Western media, they were able to make significant progress in promoting the so-called Palestinian cause. And I think that is the only lasting achievement that Hamas will have done. They've lost militarily, they've conceded ground, they've conceded most of their military capabilities, and Gaza lays in ruin as a result of the October 7 massacre and the attack on Israel that Hamas instigated. But sadly, media-wise, I think I have to grudgingly, hand that victory to them, because Western media has really done that for them. Al Jazeera and the likes of the New York Times, BBC, to the most part of it CNN, and many other established Western media, the hallmarks of Western media, have actively contributed to that. It is a fallacy, it's a lie, it's a fabrication. Most, if not all, actual military experts, when you look at the numbers, it is extremely clear, just like with the dog rape lies and fabrications, that the amount of people killed in Gaza, even if you take Hamas numbers of around 70,000 people and you compare it with the amount of combatants,
Mm.
Hamas and Islamic Jihad combatants that I would call terrorists, have been killed, it's even better than a 1-to-1 ratio. So one terrorist for every one non-combatant. Now, you won't find a single conflict in the world fought since the Second World War and even beyond that, but in terms of historical record, where that was the ratio. Usually the benchmark, and this is horrible to say and it will sound coarse, but that is the benchmark, it is one combatant to 10 non-combatants when you're dealing with fighting in densely populated urban terrain, Iraq, Afghanistan, Africa, and other places. What Israel was able to do was, by very rigorous standards, by the application of international law, by choosing the smallest available ordnance, munition, bombs to attack a military target, and by being very selective, by warning ahead of time, many times before we struck, and many other procedures that we have in place, we were able to get that number down to almost 1-to-1. By the way, obviously, attention, as you say, it's moved on. People say it as if it's established fact that there was a genocide in Gaza. But when you look at the obituaries of Hamas and the Islamic Jihad, when they are now publishing, there's like a steady drip of exposures, and they're claiming their own people. And what you find is that Palestinians who masqueraded as journalists, as medics,
Mm.
as UNRWA workers, as social workers, as first responders, they were labeled as civilians in international media. But now Hamas issues what they call, martyr posters, the Shaheed posters, where you have the name and it says, this is the brave martyr, such and such, who was killed in a military operation, and he was killed on the way to Al-Aqsa, and he was a member of Hamas or the Islamic Jihad. Another interesting source of information is stipends and money paid to widows in Gaza. The amount is almost 50,000 of widows that are receiving stipends from Hamas because their husband or partner, usually it's partner or son, were killed in combat. Now, if you have almost 50,000 Hamas combatants, and let's say that we believe Hamas that around 70,000, 72,000 people in total were killed in Gaza as part of the conflict, the majority were terrorists.
Mm.
And that should put to rest any claims about this nonsense about genocide. But just with other issues that are related to Israel and the Israeli-Arab conflict, people aren't really interested in looking at facts and getting a nuanced and information-based perception of what's going on. It's about slogans, and it's about anger and rage and propaganda. And sadly, most of the West fell for Hamas's propaganda.
All of us at Spiked love Rod Liddell. And since you're watching this YouTube channel, I bet you'll love him too. Every Saturday morning from 10 a.m., Rod takes over Times Radio for 3 hours of spiky conversation, humour, and opinion, always confronting topics head on. Rod poses the big questions to big name interviewees, ones that won't just give you the line you've heard everywhere else. And it's not all heavy lifting. You'll also get music recommendations and TV reviews to tell you what to watch and what to avoid. Join Rod Liddell Saturdays 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Times Radio via your digital radio, your smart speaker, or by downloading the free Times Radio app. And as shocking as 7th of October was, this is not the only front in the war. We now have seen, all-out war break out with Iran. Israel has also been fighting in Lebanon. How do you explain that to people who may say, for instance, that the current phase of the war in Iran was completely unprovoked, or why is Israel in Lebanon? Why are they at it again? What's your response to that?
Yeah, I mean, for someone who watches Sky or BBC in the UK, he or she would definitely have that perception, because that is what these networks portray, as if Israel is the troublemaker, as if Israel instigates fighting. Reality is different. Reality is that Israel, up until October 7, was really surrounded by a ring of fire that Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, built around Israel. Hezbollah in the north, Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and then in Syria, the Iranians had a handful of proxies. They fell and disintegrated when the Bashar al-Assad regime was overthrown. In Iraq, they have proxies. In Yemen, they have the Houthis, and of course, the Iranian regime itself. And what Iran was doing was conducting indirect warfare against Israel. The objective that the Iranian regime had and still has is to, as they call it, annihilate the Jewish entity. They don't say Israel because they don't recognize us as a state, but they say they are foreign, the Jews don't belong here, and we are going to eradicate them by the use of force. That is a national objective of the Islamic Republic. That is the context. Israel and Iran, we do not share a border. We've never been at war before. But the ones who have brought conflict to Israel are the Iranians. It's the Iranian regime, by placing their proxies around our borders and by arming them, by providing them with money and political guidance, and by telling them, go attack Israel. So that's the context in which we operate. And if you ask Israelis, what is this about, and what are we fighting? For Israelis, it's very clear. We are fighting for our existence. We are fighting for our ability to continue to be a thriving, safe, liberal democracy in the Middle East, surrounded by countries which population have very different ideas and values, not countries that espouse equal rights for men and women, for sexual minorities, not they don't have religious freedom. None of them are democracies. None of them respect the sanctity of human life. That is the neighborhood that we live in. Israel is an anomaly in that neighborhood. We're a kind of a Western democratic outpost in that area. And what troubles me the most is the betrayal of democracies. What is perhaps the most hurtful is I don't expect any of our neighbors to like us, because we really are very different. But I do expect, and I still expect, and I'm still surprised and disappointed by the level of betrayal by European countries, by democracies against Israel. To see countries like Spain, Norway, Ireland, the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand actively take sides with the Palestinians, actively take the side of Hamas in a military conflict with the state of Israel. They're actively taking the side of a terrorist organization, claiming that they're, on the side of the Palestinians, but really supporting Hamas. That, to me, is moral bankruptcy, and it is such a shame that these countries would do that. But I think it's part of a bigger problem that we have in the West of self-loathing, self-hating populations and leadership that have become so afraid to be proud of their heritage, proud of Western culture, proud of Judeo-Christian values, and to cherish what they have in life. Instead, it's this guilt-infused or guilt-ridden conscience that Europeans have, and then you see them feeling totally compelled to, yeah, why not allow pro-Hamas rallies on our streets every Sunday? Why not allow them to terrorize Jewish people and make them afraid not to go to synagogue and terrorize Jewish kids? Why shouldn't we make it okay for, why shouldn't we normalize violence against Jews on British streets or Canadian or Australian streets? It's totally okay. And we'll continue to tell the police to be very differential in their enforcement, and we'll look the other way as Jews are being targeted disproportionately by a factor of 10 more than any other ethnic minority in the UK and in Canada and in Australia as well. And we feel okay with that. And I think that is such a moral failure, which, again, it's sad for Jews. It's sad for Jews in the UK and in Canada and other places, but it'll come back to bite the very societies that allow it, because anti-Semitism is usually the canary in the coal mine.
Yeah.
It's an indicator of a society that is becoming sick, that is allowing a disease to spread. The first target, usually, historically speaking, will be the Jews, but it never ends with the Jews. So I would say, just from a interest of self-preservation in all of these countries, don't go down that way. Don't think that you can feed a monster, an Islamist monster that is intolerant, dark, medieval in its mindset, and everything else will be okay. They'll be satisfied with just having a go at the Jews and attacking the Jews and attacking Jewish institutions, and then they'll stop there. They won't. They will want more, and the next will be the Sunday people.
And finally, I agree, there's a lot to despair about in the West, but is there some hope, more hope in the Middle East? I mean, I'm not expecting people in the Arab world to start waving Israeli flags tomorrow, but with the war in Iran, are we starting to see more people in that part of the world becoming more Iran skeptical, perhaps wanting to make peace with Israel rather than have constant war? Is there maybe some hope to look forward to?
There's lots of hope. If you meet young Israelis, they are very hopeful. They're optimistic, they're proud, they're patriotic. They feel very grateful to live in a free, democratic country, to live in their ancestral homeland, and they're hopeful about the future despite everything happening. And if you talk with Arabs in the Gulf and the Arabian Peninsula, and if you speak with Lebanese people who for the first time have kind of punched through the wall of silence and fear and oppression of Hezbollah and the Iranians in Lebanon, they're saying out in the open in social media for the first time, yeah, we want to have peace with Israelis too. We don't have any real beef with Israelis. It's Hezbollah. It's these foreign Iranians who are messing around in Lebanon and using our country against us. But yeah, we want to negotiate peace. Why? Because we know it will bring us prosperity. We know that peace is good. Coexistence is good. Recognition is good. Respect and tolerance are good if you really mean it, because then there's trade and there's economy and there's Israeli high-tech and innovations and ingenuity. There's Israeli advances in agriculture and water and desalination and all matter of wonderful things that can be great for those countries. So, yes, I think, first things first. First, Israel really needs to defeat the Iranian regime. And the moment that Iranian regime is relegated to the dustbin of history by the Iranian people, but as a result of the war between the US and Israel and the Islamic Republic of Iran, I think we will see a new Middle East. And I believe that moment will come. I believe that the Iranian people will be strong enough, organized enough, and importantly, equipped with the tools necessary to actually fight and overcome the regime. I believe that the days of the Islamic Republic are counted. that they are corrupt, hated, they have mismanaged the resources of that great nation and country, and that the Iranian people has run out of tolerance and patience for this regime, and by one way or another it will fall, because it is a house of cards that is based on an evil and oppressive ideology, which, by the way, is foreign to the Iranian people.
Hmm.
Islamists are foreign to the Iranian people. It's foreign to Iranian culture. It doesn't really have historical roots there, and therefore I don't think it will continue to exist. So once that happens, but even without that happening, I believe it will. Even without that happening, there's already excellent things that are happening in the Middle East. The sad situation is, there's a lot of positives that will happen in the coming future. I think that what could eventually stand in the way of real positive developments in the Middle East is Palestinian rejectionism and the support that they're getting from democracies around the world, where these countries are saying, well, no, we don't want any of the positive things to happen in the region. Abraham Accords,
Mm.
normalization, trade, peace, science, exchanges, academy. We don't want any of that. The most important thing for people on the left, for the Labour Party in the UK, is a Palestinian state. Why is that so important? Well, it just is. Is that historically justified? Does it matter for the whole region? No, but it is. And we are going to put everything, to really focus on that, even if it jeopardizes other things. And I think that's a strategy that has done a tremendous disservice to the region for the last 78 years. It's a failing strategy. And the sooner democracies and Western countries and the institutions, the UN, etc., understand that that is a failing, an unsuccessful theory, the better for everybody involved. It'll be better for the people who identify as Palestinians, and it'll be better for the region, better for Israelis, if we can all just move on. Israel has offered the so-called Palestinians peace 4 times. 4 different prime ministers have laid serious offers on the table with maps, including 96 or 98% of the disputed territories in Judea and Samaria, or what people call the West Bank, a Palestinian capital in eastern Jerusalem, and other things that are important for the Arab side. But all of the offers have been flatly refused by Palestinians. That should have told people around the world who is willing to make compromises in order to achieve peace, and who doesn't really want it. And when it boils down to it, the so-called Palestinians do not want the state of Israel to exist. And they want it all, from the river to the sea. It is a binary solution that they espouse. It's a genocidal, one-sided solution that they want, and they're not willing to come to terms and accept the fact that Israel exists. And as long as that is the sentiment, whether it is said by jihadists in Hamas clothing with a green bandana on their head, or if it's said by the Palestinian Authority wearing suits and speaking in eloquent English, the message is the same. It's a message of lack of tolerance and lack of the fundamental acceptance that Jews live in their ancestral homeland. The Jews have been willing to compromise, the Arabs haven't. The sooner they change their mindset, the sooner we can move on to peace, prosperity, coexistence, and all the positive things that can bring with it. If you ask me how long is it going to take, I hope that my grandchildren will see it happen.
Jonathan, thank you very much.
Thank you.